Hey there everyone. So by the title of this video, I'm going to show you how to get out of debt. So this is, as you probably know if you're watching this, it's a huge issue that's plaguing a lot of people in America and other countries right now, but really we have gotten into this habit of building debt, and once you get down that rabbit hole, you can't really get out of it. So I'm just going to walk you through the basics. As you can see here, I've got this spreadsheet up. We're going to go through a little bit of quick math just to show you kind of how things work and how you can basically plan out a simple budget for yourself and try to start digging yourself out of that hole. I know it's not easy. Look, I graduated college a few years ago with tons of student loan debt, and I was fortunate to have a good salary coming out, so it was easier for me to pay it off than if I didn't have that. But it was still a lot, tens and tens of thousands of dollars to pay off, and you just keep working at it, and there are some sacrifices. So just to walk you through this, I've just got a bunch of numbers put in here just as a starting point, but as we walk through this video, we'll kind of change things up, and I have this graph out here to kind of show you guys. It'll update live so we can see kind of what's happening as we change certain inputs. So really, to walk you through the graph, this is on a 24-month basis, so about 2 years, right? 2 years. This is income. So this is your monthly income. So right now what I've done is I put in $10 hourly wage, right? It's, I know there's a lot of people out there that only make this much money, or, unfortunately even less. I know the federal minimum wage is still low, but I'm just going to start $10 an hour, starting there as a ground point, and we'll go from there. So based on that, if you make $10 an hour, you make $20,000 a year, and then here's your monthly income based on that. It's just this number divided by 12, right? Pretty simple. Expenses, just the total of what's over here, and that's plotted here as the orange line. So as you can see, as I've initially set this up, we're spending more than we make, right? And by the way, this is I'm just assuming net income. I don't want to get into whole tax argument here. I know taxes can be complicated, and we're just going to look at net. So obviously, $10 per hour net means it's more like 11 or 12 gross. So tax rates are pretty low at that level, but still, it's a difference, right? So be cognizant of that. If you do have a $10 per hour job, you're not actually going to have $20,000 a year going into your bank account. So anyway, the expenses here, this orange line, I've just thrown some numbers and some general things. So like for total rent, housing costs, I just threw $1,000 in there. This is going to vary greatly, right? If you live in New York City, you're going to laugh at this number. If you live in the middle of Arkansas, you're also going to laugh at this number, because you're going to be like, I only pay $500 a month in rent, or whatever it may be. Car, I put a few $100s in there. That's, a reasonable monthly expense for a new car in a lower price tier, right? Like think Toyota Corolla for sort of a monthly payment plus gas plus insurance. That's a reasonable number, but you'll see we'll adjust that later on. Health insurance, honestly, I just threw a couple $100 in there. You can't really estimate health insurance all that well, because based on the person, it's going to be drastically different. I myself barely spend anything on health insurance, and other healthcare costs, right? Because I don't have conditions that require constant prescriptions. I don't need to see specialists, et cetera, et cetera. But I know other people who do, right? And that can vary a lot. So, just take this as a general guidance, and obviously your number is going to be different, but I want to give you the skills to get there yourself, right? So we'll go through a few scenarios. Food, couple $100 a month. I know for me as a single person, honestly, I spend anywhere from $25 to $50 a week at the grocery store, right? So even if you're spending $50 a week as an individual at the grocery store, that's a couple hundred a month. If you only spend $25, that's only $100 a month, right? It just, again, it depends. If you're going out to eat, might be, $40, $50 just for a dinner out, depending on how nice it is. And then I just threw in this others. This could be whatever you want. Go get drinks with friends, buy gifts for, it's your parents' birthday, your friend's birthday, it's Christmas, it's whatever, right? put whatever you want in here. It's just other incidental costs. I try to get the core things that are big ticket items, and then you just kind of throw everything else in miscellaneous. So I hope that makes sense as a starting point, right? And so what we've got here, like I said, income is this blue line, expenses are this orange, and then down here, this yellow line is the net gain or loss per month. So as you can see with this setup, I'm making less than I'm spending. I'm spending the total of this, which is $1,800 a month. And so my net gain and loss is actually minus $133 every month. And that's why this is below the zero line. And then my green line here is the cumulative gain / loss. So this is actually showing, since the beginning of my analysis, how much have I gained or lost, right? And this is obviously showing, this is actually, I've plotted it on this right-hand axis, so try not to get confused there, but it's basically saying, hey, every month I'm losing $133, so by the end of 24 months, I'm in the hole over $3,000, right? And that's an issue a lot of us find ourselves in, right? Because you have these habits, you have your job, and you might, not be able to get your expenses low enough. That's a scenario that a lot of people face, right? It's just like, hey, between rent and literally paying to live, I can't, spend little enough based on my salary. So that's a scenario. Or you might, spend a certain amount assuming like, oh, I'm going to get a raise soon, or I'm going to get a promotion soon, or I'm going to get a new job. And I know people who have done that, and then that never comes, or it's not as significant as they think, and then you're sort of like, oh shoot, I just took on a couple $1,000s in debt, and I didn't get that bonus that I thought I would get. And now what do I do, right? So again, just a scenario. We're just going to kind of walk through a few things. So if this is my situation, right, let's say, I make $10 an hour, $20,000 a year, and these are my expenses. What can I do, right? So the basics of how to get out of debt, it's, this is going to sound dumb, but it's quite simple. It's just spend less than you make, right? And there's investing, there's taxes, there's all these other complicated things, but if you are in debt, or if you're trying to not go into debt, the key is do not spend any more than you make, right? You need to spend less than that goes into your bank account every month. And I don't care who you are, what situation you're in, but that's the only way you're going to get out of debt, okay? So you really need to look at your finances hard. And one thing I did when I graduated is I actually tracked every purchase. And that sounds really annoying and crazy, but I tracked every single purchase. Hey, got gas, $32.87. And I had it all in an Excel sheet. And I would total up how much am I spending each month. And I would just make sure that that's below how much I made, and that allowed me enough to pay off, some of my student loans and some of my car loan, right? And I did this, and I was diligent, and I would notice like, oh, this month I spent, a couple $100s more than last month. How come? And I would look and be like, oh, I went out a couple extra times. Oh, I bought a new video game. Oh, whatever it may be. And you can you see your spending habits, and you kind of see your baseline, and then you see what peaks you have due to certain things, buying gifts, buying things that are interesting to you. And it allows you to adjust, right? It allows you to go, do I really need to go out every Friday night, or maybe I skip one Friday per month, and that saves me $50 from getting drinks and food. And if that gets you out of debt, maybe it's worth it, right? Maybe it's not, right? Maybe it's not always worth it. I understand that. We need to enjoy our lives too, but the reality is if you're a young person with debt or an older person with debt, you might be enjoying your life now and being able to ignore it now, but at some point it does catch up to you, and that's not a good spot to be in. And there's also just this emotional weight that's there, right? So if we look at this simple analysis, right now I'm in the hole. I'm going down the drain every month. So what can I do, right? What can I do to change my situation? So I can't really decrease health insurance, right? We're kind of stuck here. Again, this is a made-up number, but healthcare, you can't let yourself die. That's a silly thing to do, right? Food, you have some wiggle room. Do you have that much wiggle room? No. Again, you have to eat. You can't let yourself die. So let's just say, oh, maybe I don't need to spend $50 per week at the grocery store. Let's say, what if I can get it down to $40 a week, right? Like maybe I don't buy, maybe I buy some more store brand stuff instead of the name brand stuff. Maybe instead of getting organic, I just get regular, right? And I'm not going to get into that about who chooses what, but there are ways you can buy cheaper food. But again, they might not align with your values, and those are decisions you have to make for yourself. And maybe food's not the place to cut your budget. But for me, I'm going to say, hey, let's cut it from $50 to $40 a week, which will go from $200 to $160 a month, right? Boom. That instant change there has made a $1,000 difference at the end of 24 months. Instead of, you recall, I was $3,200 in debt. Now I'm only $2,200 in debt if I keep everything else the same. Kind of significant. You don't think $10 a week is that much, but $10 a week just made a $1,000 difference after 2 years, okay? Or $500 after 1 year. So that's one thing to do really easily. This all others, what is that, right? Is it gifts? Is it going out to eat? Like, what are we really doing here? What if we knock it down to $50 a month? I know we all like to do things and may like to spoil our friends or our significant others or whatnot, but if we're in a bad financial situation, it's not a good decision to splurge all the time on various things. So if we cut this down to $50, that just made another $1,000 difference at the end of that 2 years, right? So now I'm really close to only spending as much as I make, okay? Now you look at the hard ones, right? So, those were easy. You kind of sacrificed parts of your life. Now let's look at the car, right? So in this scenario, I pretended I bought a new car, a low tier, right? I'm not out there like buying a BMW. I'm buying like a Toyota Corolla, a Hyundai Elantra. That's actually what I have, a Hyundai Elantra. Very affordable car. Great warranty, by the way. Not that they're not paying me anything to say that. I like my car. It has a 5-year built-in warranty and then 10-year on the drivetrain. Anyway, so it's a great car, and I bought it new 3 years ago, and there were payments that I had to pay with that, right? And I've paid it off, and I'm happy about that. But if you're in this situation, you kind of think about, okay, instead of spending $20,000 on a car and making payments for, 6 years on that car, what if we buy a used car, right? What if I buy a used car, say, don't make that much right now. If it lasts me 5 years, 10 years, whatever, I'm thrilled. I'll be in a better financial state when that's over. Or if you're not, you buy another used car, right? You don't have to buy a new car. So if you buy a used car, maybe I can cut that down to $200 a month. Boom. You can see how that flipped it, right? So now I'm spending less than I'm making. Awesome. Depending on how much debt you have, you're on the path to paying that off, right? So I'm now saying that at the end, by making those quick 3 changes, right? All I've done is $10 less a week on food, $50 less a month on random incidentals, and $100 less a month on the car. And that's, once you buy a car, you're kind of stuck. You have it, right? But these are things you have to think about before you buy it in the first place. So, and that's made a difference between me going from basically losing $130 a month to now making about $60 a month. And if I'm in debt, I can use that to chip away at the debt. If I'm not in debt, I can start cashing that into the bank account, build up some buffer so that if a big expense hits, I have cash to pay it. Or, if, somebody I love's birthday is coming up, I might be able to splurge on them a little bit. Or, whatever it may be, it's just some extra money. And it's never bad to have a little bit extra. Now you might say, Max, $1,000 a month is crazy. I live in a city, right? It's like, okay, you live in a city, don't buy a car. How much is your rent? $2,000 a month? That's a bad situation, right? You're losing almost $1,000 every month. Hate to say it. I don't know. Are you 25? Are you 30? Are you 35? No, you're not going to want to hear this, but get a roommate, right? So if it's $2,000 a month for a 1-bedroom in whatever city you live, you're going to lose a lot of money. See this line? This is not good. You're almost $20,000 in the hole after 2 years. But maybe if it's $2,000 a month for a one bedroom, it might be $2,500 a month for a two bedroom. Get a roommate, boom, you're just barely, breaking even now. Maybe it's $3,000 a month if you have a three bedroom. So you come here, if it's $3,000 for three people, you're only paying $1,000 a month. There you go. You just got your expensive city apartment back down to what somebody maybe in the suburbs or in a more rural area might pay on a monthly basis, and you don't have to pay for a car if you're in the city. Okay, let's tack in $100 for other transportation, bus, subway, etc. You're still on the positive end of things, okay? But if we go back to our other scenario, what did we have? We had 200 and 1,000. You might say, Max, I live in the middle of Arkansas. Rent is not $1,000 a month. This isn't realistic. It's like, okay, let's say it's only $750 a month for you. Great. What do you want? You're making $300 extra per month. If you have debt, I would suggest use that to pay off your debt, right? If maybe your healthcare expenses are a little higher, you still have some buffer, right? You can put those back down. Maybe you buy some more food, right? You can splurge a little more on food. Let's say you spend $250 a month on food. You're still okay. Maybe you do buy that new car. You're still okay, right? So these are situations where if you're not in debt, you just have to make sure this isn't negative. But if you are in debt, you do have to be conscious about making sure it's positive enough. If I was in $1,000 worth of debt, this is enough because I can pay it off after a year. If I'm in $10,000 worth of debt, I need to really cut down on things. I need rent to be this low. I need, maybe to only spend a couple $100 on a car, maybe $160 on food a month. And now it's $300 a month that I can chip away at that $10,000 worth of debt, and maybe I can pay it off in 3-5 years, right? This is a process. It's a long process. So that's kind of, different scenarios based on different people, for sure. And if you're rural, maybe you could argue, it's better to live in a less populated area because rent's cheaper and that's a big expense. That's true. But what you see nowadays is a lot of cities are making the minimum wage $15 an hour. If you're making $15 an hour, you're making $30,000 a year. And then, even if your rent is $1,500, and even if my car is, let's say $100 for transportation, not a car in a city, bus, subway, taxi, whatever, and a couple $100 on food, I'm still making almost $500 a month based on these expenses, right? It seems like, oh wow, that $15 an hour doesn't sound like a lot, but if you really analyze your expenses and where you're putting your money, you can do a lot with it. You can. Can you raise a family on it? Probably not. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. I wouldn't suggest trying to raise a family on $15 an hour. But if you're, high school, college graduate, no kids, no family, can you survive on $15 an hour? Yeah. Even if you're in a city, can you? Yeah, you can. It might not be the most luxurious lifestyle, for sure. You might have to make some sacrifices. But you can, even if your health insurance costs $400 a month. Even if you bump this up to $150. Look, I just bumped all these up, keeping that transportation low because I'm pretending I'm in a city. And let's say this rent, we're pretending I'm in a 2-bedroom with one roommate, $3,000 for a 2-bedroom, and this would be my rent. And at $15 an hour, I'm still not losing money every month, right? So these are just things you have to look at. And if you just look at what am I bringing in, what am I losing, is it positive? It's all good then. Now, if you're very fortunate, right, and you make a good salary, right, and I hear people talk, $80,000 isn't enough. $90,000. It's like, what is enough then, right? So if you're, let's say you're making $30 an hour, which is $60,000, let's go up to the 70. Let's do $35 an hour, $70,000 a year, right? That's a lot. That's more than the average income by a lot. But I hear people who make this much money saying how they're going into debt. It's not enough to afford their living. let's say your rent's $2,000 a month. Let's say your car is $500 a month. You buy a decent car, right? $500 a month can get you a good car with insurance and gas. That can get you a $30,000 car. That's nothing to sneeze at. Let's say your health insurance is $500 a month. That's true for a lot of people. Let's say you spend a few $100s a month on food, and then all others. Let's just say you like having fun, $500 a month on other random stuff, right? This is still leaving me, I'm making, okay, and let's back this off, because after taxes, it's going to be more like $30 an hour, right? I'm still making $5,000 a year, okay? Sorry, a month, not a year. My expenses are less than $4,000. My net gain every month is $1,200. If I keep that up, that's, at the end of 2 years, this is almost $30,000. So say you graduate from college. You have $50,000 in student loan debt, right? And your income is $60,000, which, depending on what you go to school for, is very achievable, right? If you're an engineer, this is going to be a very achievable wage. If you're something else, if you're in social work, if you're going into teaching, I understand this isn't as achievable, right? It just depends, and that's where you have to really analyze it. But you get here, and if this is your income out of college and you have $50,000 in debt, what this is saying is it's going to take you about 4-5 years to pay that off. That's great. Like that's not a long time to pay off that much student loan debt, right? Like that is not. And that kind of puts you on a timetable to finish paying that off and then be able to, start your family or whatnot, or it depends. Everybody's on a different timetable. If you have a family, right, all these are blown out the window. If I have a family, this might be $500 a month. This might be $3,000 a month, and then I'm barely breaking even at this salary, right? And that's where you're just like, maybe that's where you need to be to survive, right? I get that. Different scenarios result in different things. It just kind of is what it is. But I just wanted to kind of take you guys through this, show you, it's not a mountain that you can't climb. If you're sitting here making $12 an hour after taxes, if you can find yourself a roommate or two, if you can get rid of that car or get a used car, health insurance, again, you're kind of stuck with your situation. Unfortunately, I know it's not a great situation for a lot of people out there, and I'm not trying to make light of that, but look at what I just did, right? I was able to, even with $500 a month in health related costs, I was able to get this down to where I'm not taking on debt at a $12 an hour after taxes wage, right? Even if I'm in a city, get a couple of roommates, can get rent down to here. Car expense can be pretty low. If you're in a city, you don't have a car, it's just transportation. Health insurance, $500 a month. Food and others, I'm not sitting here telling you it's a luxurious life. It's not. But it can be done. It can certainly be done. And then if you make more than this, if you're up, like I said, if you're up in the $40 an hour range, it's like you can do whatever, I hate to say, you can kind of do whatever you want. Like this is a lot of money. If you're making, $6,000 a month after taxes, you can do a lot with that, I think. As somebody who's had and spent a lot less than that and still felt happy with my life, you can do a lot with that. So I'm just trying to sit here and tell you guys, even if you're in these low income brackets and you feel like you're struggling and you're taking on debt, or you're really using that credit card a lot to live the life you want, it's just take a hard look at your finances, really think about what you're spending on every month, and then you can even build yourself one of these. It's really not complicated. All I did here is I have an hourly wage cell. I got this. It's just the hourly wage times a 40-hour work week times 50 weeks a year, right? So I even factored in 2 weeks of unpaid vacation, right? Which, it is what it is. It's an assumption, I put it. And that gets me my income, and then this is just that annual income divided by 12 to be every month, right? And then my expenses is just summing up all of this. So what you can do for yourself is make the same thing and really break down your expenses. And if the list is this long, then this can just be the sum of all of those. And then all this is it's your income minus your expenses. And then the cumulative is just adding, this is 90, this is 90 plus 90, this is 90 plus 180, this is 90 plus 270. It builds on each other. And you make this quick graph, right, which this is Google Sheets. In Google Sheets, all you would do is you would go like this, and you go insert, chart, and what I did is line graph, and you move this month as the x-axis, and there you go. This is exactly the chart I have here. I just remade it to show you guys how. So again, not trying to minimize the situation here, but it's not rocket science. It does take some work. It takes some thinking in it, and unfortunately it takes some sacrifice. You can't have everything you want if you're in a budget constrained situation, but if you're in your 20s, if you're in your 30s, and you're taking on $500 a month of debt to live the life that you want to live, at some point you're going to hit an age where you go, oh shoot, now I'm 50 with a family trying to send my kids to college, and I have $100,000 worth of personal debt, and I'm still not making, and that's when you're in the situation where you're like, I make $100,000 a year, and that's not enough, right? I don't blame you. If you make $100,000 a year and you have $100,000 in debt, that doesn't feel like enough, right? Because you have this huge emotional burden. But if you make, let's bump this up. If you're making $60,000 a year after taxes, and these are your expenses, your net gain is still $2,000 a month. Even if you have, $50,000 in debt, it's a couple years, a few years, 3 to 5 years to pay that off, right? If you have $100,000 in debt, it's 10 to 15 years to pay that off. And that's why you get these people who make this much, and they say it's not enough, and it goes, well, yeah, because if you have so much debt, it doesn't feel like enough. So, anyway, let me know in the comments below what you think. If you need any tips, I'm happy to kind of help people. Every situation is different. Sorry I couldn't go into every situation, but hopefully this gives you a good template to kind of set yourself up for the future, to analyze your own situation. Just trying to give you the tools to do it yourself, since I can't predict everyone's situation. But like I said, let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll be coming out with more of these, going over different aspects. So looking forward to that, and let me know what you want to see next. Thanks.